Aloha. Welcome to part two of the Mr.G Hawaii podcast, episode number 30 of season two. Today is Friday, February 16th, 2024. I'm coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii, where it is 71 degrees. It got below 60. It got into the 60s today, which is rare. So I'm in hoodie weather. I hope everybody's nice. It's also coffee weather in Hawaii. Hawaii Kona coffee is the second best coffee in the world. I can't afford it. This is Folgers, but when I can, I really do enjoy it. Today, we're talking about social generations. You know the ones: Gen Z, Gen Y, the greatest generation, the silent generation, millennials, and Gen X, the alpha generation. Oh no, that's Gen Alpha, the newer generation. We're going to go through that because a lot of people are interested. And in the comments, there's always arguments. People saying, I was born in 85. I'm a Gen Xer. I was born in 79. I'm a millennial. This and that. So we're going to go over the official numbers, the official reasoning. And I'm going to tell you somebody that I know from every generation, which isn't possible. We're just going to do the generations of people that are still alive. Right now, the oldest people that are still alive, I think the oldest woman alive right now is about 120 years old, maybe 130. Um, they don't have a generation for her. She's on her own. She's in her own generation. Her generation is known as the oldest person alive generation. But we do have members of the lost generation, which goes from 1883 to 1900. Actually, you'd have to be 123 years old to be a member of that lost generation. So we might have one or two people that are still alive that are from the lost generation, which I believe was coined by Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway was born around 1900, and so he would be a member of that lost generation. After the lost generation, it's the greatest generation. Tom Brokaw did a famous journalism series about the greatest generation. Those are people that were born from the years 1901 to 1927. And they're called the greatest generation because they survived um, the stock market crash in the late 20s and the Great Depression in the 30s and World War II as well. These are the people that served in World War II. And they were born up until 27. So the members, the oldest, the youngest members of the greatest generation, if they're still alive, they would be approaching 100 years old. They'd be 97 years old or older. So in the next 10 or 20 years, we're going to lose everybody from the lost generation, even if there is anybody left from the lost generation. They're all lost. That pun was uncalled for. There's the greatest generation. We're going to lose most of them because the youngest members of the greatest generation are in their late 90s. And what comes after the greatest generation? The silent generation. I believe Jack Kerouac, William Burroughs, and Allen Ginsberg spoke about the silent generation and members of the silent generation, those beat writers. That includes everybody born between 1928 and 1945. Baby boomers, the war ended about 45 in 1944, 45, I believe. And so everybody born after the war from 1946 to 1964 is a baby boomer. That's 18 years. Most generations here are separated by 15 years. The baby boomers, they have the biggest block. They have 18 years. And it used to be the baby boomers was the largest demographic in the United States. Just recently, the number of millennials caught up to the number of baby boomers. Hey, Mr. G, how's that possible? Are millennials still being born? Good question, imaginary student. No, the reason why is because baby boomers are dying. Yeah, that's the reason why. So millennials are catching up because they're younger, and baby boomers, which used to be the most dominant uh, uh, group in the United States, they're passing on because the baby boomer generation is 1945 to 1964. So how old are the oldest baby boomers? Well, if they were born in 1945, that would make them 79 years old. So the youngest baby boomers are 79 years old if they were born in 45. Is that right? Yeah, 79 years old. The oldest baby boomers. No, that's the oldest baby boomers were born in 46. So that makes them 79 years old. The youngest baby boomers were born in 64. So that makes them 60. 60 was that how many years ago was 1964? 64, 74, 84, 94, 2004, 2014, 2024. Okay, so the youngest baby boomers are 60 years old. So if you get called a boomer, they're referring to you as somebody between the ages of 60 and 75, 79, 79, yeah, 45. Hey, I ain't no boomer, all right? After that, we have Gen X, but that's insulting that they're the generation right before me. I'm like, damn, you boomers are old. I'm Gen X, the very next group. However, I'm very late Gen X, born the last year of Gen X is 1980. I was born at the very last 1979. I was conceived on Christmas of 79, me and my twin brother. I was there. I was born, conceived, and born late 79. So boomers would be at the very end of, I'm at the very end of Gen X. So even though baby boomers come before Gen X, they're at the very end of Gen X. And I'm a great person to analyze this as well, I believe, because like I said, I'm a member of Gen X, but when I didn't graduate college until 2010. I didn't graduate college from the University of Texas until I was 30, hook 'em horns. And you're like, oh, that's not that old. Well, 95% of all undergraduates when I was at the University of Texas, 95% were under the age of 25. So if you're 26, you're a senior citizen. If you're 26, or older, you're the oldest person in all your classes. It's not like in community college where there's single mothers going back to school and businessmen taking part-time jobs and people just trying college out and a wide demographic. No, and it's generally wealthy Caucasian and Asian people from wealthy backgrounds in the major universities across the United States. And hey, watch any college football game and look in the crowd. Look at the student section. What demographic do you mainly see? Young, wealthy people. I don't know how we got onto that. I got into myself too much. No, okay. The point is, I went to school with all millennials, and I was in Gen X disguising as a millennial. Once the teacher asked something about that, they're like, "I think we're all millennials in here." Now everybody that's a university student is a Gen Z because the oldest millennials are 29, 30. So this all includes the Western world, Europe, the Americas, and Australia. Many variations may exist within these regions, both geographically and culturally, which means the list is broadly indicative, but very general. The contemporary characterization of these cohorts used in media and advertising bureaus. So in part, the Strauss-Howe generational theory and generally follows the logic of the pulse rate hypothesis. All right, so the lost generation, also known as the generation of 1914 in Europe, is a term originating from Gertrude Stein to describe those who fought in World War I. The lost generation is defined as the cohort born between 1883 and 1900 who came of age during World War I and the Roaring Twenties. So Gertrude Stein was a writer, friends with Ernest Hemingway, and I don't know if Ernest Hemingway had any input on creating that term, the lost generation. After the lost generation, it's the greatest generation, also known in American usage as GI generation, including veterans who fought in World War II. They were born between 1901 and 1927. Older GIs, or the interbellum generation, came of age during the Roaring Twenties, while younger GIs came of age during the Great Depression and during World War II. Journalist Tom Brokaw wrote about members of this cohort in his book, The Greatest Generation, which popularized the term. As far as people that I know from the Greatest Generation, a friend of mine, Benny Woodrow McGee, his dad, Benny Woodrow McGee the first, was born in 1917. So he had my friend Benny when he was in his 60s. He also fought in World War II as a fighter pilot. and he was a member of that generation, the greatest generation. Also, I remember my grandparents talking about being born during the Great Depression, and they had some habits that did not wear off. If you left a light on in a room at my grandparents' house, and then you went to the room, they would flip the fuck out. Why'd you leave this light on? You think this electricity is just gonna, they would like, harbor food, and they would hoard food, and they would some habits that they developed when they were young and growing up in the Great Depression. They never escaped. You always had to finish every speck of food on your plate, and you had to be damn grateful for it. And a lot of people, most people, they don't outgrow their habits. The music that they listen to in high school is the same music that they listen to in their 40s. The type of personality and the type of job that they have, most people don't change that much throughout their life. So, and that's a great example. People that grew up during the Great Depression, it was hard for them to shake that feeling of scarcity out of their minds. Now, baby boomers are different. Baby boomers, often shortened to boomers, are people born following World War II from 1946 to 1964. Increased birth rates were observed during the post-World War II baby boom, making them a relatively large demographic. Many older boomers have fought in the Vietnam War or participated in the hippie counterculture, while younger boomers, or Generation Jones, came of age during the 1970s. All right, so after baby boomers, we got Gen X. Gen X, directly following boomers, is defined as people born between 1965 and 1980. There's also a different number of subcultures and countercultures since the 1950s. In the US, some called Xers the baby bust generation because of a drop in birth rates compared to the baby boom. Gen X, they're known for cable TV, MTV. Like I said, they talk highly of themselves, a time before phones, before internet, a time where we were left to our own devices and had to grow up on our own. There's so many TikTok memes across the internet about Gen Xers and TikTok on Twitter. So they're the most praised generation. They think so highly of themselves, it seems like. Millennials are the opposite. Millennials, also known as Gen Y, are the generation following Gen X, who grew up at the turn of the third of the millennial. This is the generation, some of them were born in the 20th century, some of them were born in the 21st century. It's generally typically defined, oh no, excuse me, no, that's Gen Z. They were born in both centuries. Millennials were born all at the end of the 20th century, from 1981 to 1996. The Pew Research Center reported that millennials surpassed baby boomers in the US in 2019, with an estimated 71.6 million boomers and 72.1 million millennials. So those are the two largest groups in the United States right now, millennials and baby boomers. Gen Z is going to, and Gen Alpha will overtake them within the next 20 years. And the reason being is that people die and other people are born. Sad story, huh? So Gen Z, all right, they're the ones I was talking about on the Valentine's episode. And I'll say it again, there are more male virgins in Gen Z than in any other demographic that we're going through on this list. There's more unsuccessful men at dating. And I tried to give some advice on the last episode. I didn't want to try to come off as like, oh, this is when you, as a, those guys that go on the street and try to romance women or anything like that. I was talking to my lady, who this podcast is actually dedicated to, my muse, Jamie, Jim, Jem. This is dedicated to my English baby, my English beautiful woman. What was I talking about? I was thinking, my mind got scattered. But what are we going tonight? Oh yeah, generations. No, why seriously, I started thinking about other things. All right. Oh, Gen Z. That's right. Yeah. I wasn't like trying to act like, this is what you're supposed to do. I was giving helpful advice. I'm not hating on any generation. The advice that I gave, an explanation basically came directly from Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson, who talks about the same thing, the lack of success, not only in dating, but also in jobs and in education, and even in the military service. You have less men in Gen Z graduating from college, joining the military, or doing many constructive things with their lives. And what is the reason for that? And will the preceding generation be the same? Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is still being born. Young kids today are Gen Alpha. They're not old enough to get their driver's license. The oldest members of Gen Alpha are 12 or 13 years old. So I don't have experience with Gen Alpha. When I was a high school teacher, the students were Gen Z. They were all Gen Z. And when I was a tutor at a private school for gifted children, they were also Gen Z. So that's my experience with Gen Z. When I think of that generation, okay, what was different about Gen Z compared to millennials? Millennials, like I said, I went to school with all millennials and I was a Gen Xer. So what's the difference between millennials, the people I went to school with, compared to the students that I taught, the high school students that I taught, and the gifted students I tutored, all members of Gen Z? And also the third group, my group, Gen X, compared to the people that I went to school with. And since I was later Gen X, also known as a Gennial, people born on the cusp of Gen X and millennial, a Gennial, I would say what's the difference between the people I went to school with and the people a few years older? Gen X, people that did not grow up with the internet. And there are differences in each of them. Gen Alpha are the generation succeeding Gen Z. Research and popular media typically use the early 2010s as the starting birth year until the mid-20s as the ending birth year. So the youngest members of Gen Alpha aren't born yet. The people born in the next few years will be the last members of Gen Alpha. And I don't even know if they have a name for the next generation. Who knows if the world will even make it that far. As of 2015, there were 2.5 million people born every week around the globe for Gen Alpha. Everybody born now is Gen Alpha. And Gen Alpha is expected to reach nearly 2 billion in size by 2025. So Gen Alpha will be a dominant generation, and so will Gen Z. The older generations are dying off, and that's just how it is. Like I said, the silent generation, people born between 1928 and 1945, the oldest members of the silent generation, if you were born in 1928, you're 96 years old. So there are very few people, and even baby boomers, the youngest baby boomers are 60 though, and that's not necessarily old, especially now. People are living to more and more people are becoming centurions and living to 100. So baby boomers are going to be around at least for the next 40 years, until they turn 100. Gen X will be around for the next 60 years. And millennials, the youngest millennials are about 30 years old. So they'll be around for about 70 years. Gen Z, I wish there was a different name. Gen Z, it just sounds so, I don't know. But they're going to be around for the next 80, 90 years. And Gen Alpha, they're going to be around for 100 plus years. So the world is putting their faith in the Gen Alpha. We're all hoping that Gen Alpha saves the planet. And I think with a little help from Gen Z, some wiser millennials, and some expert Gen X's like myself, I have hope for the future of mankind and humanity. Thank you for listening to the Mr. G podcast. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts. Send it to a friend, tell somebody about it, and check out the reviews of my first book, Gonzo Education. Everybody have a great day. Aloha.